Welcome to the DMZ, a place to practice good faith rhetoric, not just farm gotchas and dunks. We use structure to cultivate conversations where you have to stop and listen to the other person, even if it is just to find the flaws in what they are saying. Please check your weapons at the door, take notes, and attack the belief, not the believer. After each debate, there will be a free link to where you can go to vote on which side you believe made the most compelling case. So, sit back, relax, and cast those votes. This is the DMZ. Okay, so we're going to put 3 minutes on the clock. We're going to go back and forth, 3-minute opens, 3-minute cross/rebuttals, back and forth from team to team. Captain's going to make the calls. Then whoever hasn't gone against each other yet is going to go into the ring for a 10-minute champion round. After that, we'll go again through the same order, and everybody's going to get 3 minutes to do a closing argument or, parting thoughts. After that, like I said, we're going to put the code into the chat. Everybody can click on that and vote. But while we're doing that, we'll be looking to you guys to give us any questions. If you guys don't give me any questions, then I might just have to ask a few myself. But please don't make me do that because I'm not smart enough. So, without further ado, Castle, Team AF, who is going to be your first debater, sir?
So we're going to start off with Circa.
Circa. All right, sounds good. Circa, 3 minutes is on the clock for you, sir. I will go ahead and start the clock. I fixed it. I will start the clock when you start to talk, sir.
Okay. Right before permission, I want to start by clearing something up because I feel like this argument or this topic can get a little unclear pretty fast. I'm not going to be arguing, or we're not going to be arguing that every speech act is a good thing or that every speech act is harmless. We're not going to be arguing that threats, fraud, coercion, incitement, intimidation suddenly become sacred because someone used words. That would be ridiculous. The real question here is going to be something a little bit different. Does speech begin as a moral liberty that power must justify restricting, or does it begin as a permission from the very power speech may need to criticize? A natural right is not a physical object sitting out in nature. It is not a religious spell. It is not just whatever humans naturally do. A natural right is a basic moral claim rooted in what persons are: rational, morally responsible agents. A civil right is what government recognizes and enforces. A natural right is what government must answer to. And I think that distinction is integral. If rights only exist when the state creates them, then no state can violate rights by law. And a regime can punish dissent, criminalize criticism, force public orthodoxy, and then say no right was violated, or we never gave you that right. That makes tyranny a little bit too easy, and it turns rights into paperwork. Speech belongs on the natural rights side because speech is how judgment becomes public. We reason through speech. We warn, worship, accuse, defend, persuade, criticize, create, refuse, and dissent through speech. This is not about sound waves. It is about agency again. The state can regulate the abusive part of this. It can punish threats. It can stop fraud. It can restrain coercion. All of those are fine. But the person does not need permission to reason in public. The censor here needs the justification to silence them. And that is what a natural right is.
At the end of your time?
End it there.
All right. Cheers. Yep. Very good. So now I'm looking at you, Tyler. Tyler, who is going to cross Circa?
I've actually offloaded this responsibility to one of my peasants. It's going to be Ancom. Take care of it for me.
All right. Ancom.
My pleasure.
3 minutes is on the clock for you, sir. Remember, this is your time to control as you see fit. Question or rebut. I will start the clock when you start to talk.
Thank you. Circa, a couple questions for you. First of all, what makes a right natural as opposed to being legal or conventional or constitutional or anything like that.
A natural right in this argument is going to be a basic moral claim rooted in human nature, rational agency, and moral responsibility.
Okay, and does that
A
right
civil
exist
right,
if
a
there's
civil
no one?
right is what government recognizes and enforces.
Okay, does a natural right exist if no one recognizes or enforces it?
Yeah, in this answer it would, yeah.
It would. Okay,
Are
so
you saying natural rights are
how would you?
imaginary?
If there's no enforcement of a right, then how exactly can it be called a right?
It's what a government must answer to in this argument. So are you saying they're imaginary?
Okay,
Too
so
abstract?
if a government has to answer to something, then if no
Mhm.
government exists, no right can exist because a right would then require a government to exist, would
No,
it not?
my definition again, ANCOM, was a basic moral claim rooted in human nature. So moral claims can exist before positive law.
Okay, you're saying it is a basic. Sorry, say that one more time for me. A
It's a
basic
basic
moral
moral
claim.
claim rooted in human nature.
Okay, what grounds that claim?
Rational agency, moral responsibility.
Okay, moral responsibility. Where does that come from?
The sourcing for this, I mean, Hart would be probably my primary source. Are there natural rights? 1955.
So emotion, or you're saying emotions, or like an inbuilt sense of morality, something like that?
No, they're normative claims, as in like they exist before
Okay, no. You
positive
said that
law.
there was a moral responsibility. A
Yeah.
responsibility is something that is placed upon someone by an outside entity. So I'm asking, what is placing that responsibility on the moral actor to respect the right?
That's a part of it. But again, rational agency and human nature also, you can't separate them. They'd all kind of come together for this. That's what
Say
it's
that one more
rooted
time.
in. Again, my definition is a moral claim rooted in human nature, rational agency, and moral responsibility. You can make moral
but those
normative
are
claims
three
without
separate
positive
things.
law.
So what I'm trying to
I-
say is we need to separate those out, because
Again, you
what
can
you're
have
saying
moral
is
responsibility without positive law,
you can
or make a
have
normative
moral
claim.
responsibility without positive law. But again, a
Yeah.
responsibility is something that is put on you by an outside force, is it not?
No, that would essentially make it so the right itself would be subject to whatever government. So you'd be making a mistake, in my opinion, right? You'd have legal positivism
But
at this
would
point.
I? Because you are saying that there's a responsibility, but without anyone to place that responsibility, without any entity to place that responsibility upon a
Can a
moral
law
actor.
be unjust?
Of course.
Okay, so
All
legal
right, so
validity.
I'm gonna go ahead and jump on in there real quick. I let Ancom finish his last question there, but it is now your time to open. Ancom, 3 minutes is on the clock for you, sir. Go ahead and start it up.
All right. So the question that we're debating tonight is whether or not freedom of speech is a natural right. My response to this is that the question itself assumes something that I do not believe exists, which I say is a natural right. I do not believe rights are natural implicitly. I believe that they are derived from various sources. So let's go ahead and define what a right is. It's not just a desire or capacity. It must bind someone else's behavior. Without any sort of binding force, it merely reduces to a wish or a preference. Natural, as we heard Circa state, means that it's pre-political and independent, that it must exist before any state, contract, or institution. But without enforcement, what actually stops violation of any of these rights? Humans naturally deceive, compete, and harm one another. So we can say, and Circa mentioned this in his opening, that the ability to do something does not imply a right to do something. Nature tells us what is, not what ought to be, and particularly not what ought to be protected as a right. So in this argument, the affirmative has to clear two specific hurdles. First, that natural rights exist at all, and second, that the right to speech is specifically among them. Failing either of these is sufficient to negate the prompt. When we look at the historical record, we see that any enumeration of these natural rights, it does not include speech. Typically, the list includes life, liberty, and property, or if you are taking the Jeffersonian view, it's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But on either of those grounds, speech is not inherently included. Speech has been defended on practical grounds because better outcomes come from having more open discourse, but that doesn't make it a natural right. That's a practical reason to protect it. There are many different kinds of arguments for why we should protect speech, but calling it a natural right is the flaw here. Speech is a political construction, not natural. It varies across different societies globally and across history. It requires legislation and active protection to exist at all. Natural things don't need to be written into law in order to be or to continue to exist. But the fact that we have made an active choice to protect speech because we find it useful tells me that this is an artificial right, not a natural one, as I believe all rights are artificial. Thank
you. And Castle, who is going to cross-examine ANCOM.
So I would say Circa should cross-examine ANCOM. I don't know. Horace, you tell me. Can he go back and forth? Or?
Nope. It's got to be either. It's got to be either you or Doomer.
All right, so we're just going to concede that. No, I'm kidding. I'll cross-examine.
All right. So then, in that case, Castle, 3 minutes is on the clock for you, sir. Go ahead and start it on up.
Yeah. So, ANCOM, you said these rights come from various sources. If rights only came from law or, let's say, social agreement, can an unjust law ever violate someone's rights?
Of course it can.
Okay, so were enslaved people without a right to liberty before the law recognized that right?
Did they have that right inherently? Not necessarily. Was it moral that they were being enslaved? Absolutely not.
Well, if you're saying morally they were enslaved, that wouldn't be moral that they were enslaved. Aren't you kind of conceding to the point that they were born with that right naturally from birth?
No, I'm conceding to the fact that we now, in our current day and age, viewing the practice of slavery, see it to be immoral. But again, that is a product of our current time and society, not anything that was naturally existent prior to this particular context.
Okay. To your other point, just due to time, we said without a binding source, rights are just preferences. So if something is not legally enforceable, does that mean it's not morally binding?
Well, moral and legal are two very different categories. So something could be morally binding and be legal or illegal in your current position. But remember, we're talking about rights, not morals here. These are two very different categories.
Okay, so if a person has no legal protection, for example, under like an authoritarian regime, do they have no rights at all? Is the victim's claim like that merely oppression is a preference until the state agrees with them? How do you argue against that type of government, for example?
I would argue against it by saying that it is immoral and that the people should take actions to protect what they deem as their own personal rights. But again, it does still come down to a preference within a particular cultural context.
Okay, but what would we call personal rights?
Personal rights are whatever we decide that our right should be, and that we have the ability to defend or gather a community to defend with us.
But don't you think somebody's personal rights, whatever they may be, would be a natural right to them? Somebody who came up with this idea naturally when they were born felt a certain way, whatever
I would
reason
say
it may
most of the
be.
time I would say that most of the time the rights that people determine for themselves are informed just as much through culture and society as they are through personal reason. There are both external and internal influences on what a person believes their own rights to be.
Right. So with that, 3 minutes is on the clock for your opening now, Castle. Go ahead and start it up when you're ready, sir.
Cool. So kind of make my argument clearly. I know that Circa had defined the terms, but just to restate it again, a natural right is not the same as a thing as like a statute or a legal privilege or an instinct or a supernatural object. The natural right that we're debating today is a moral claim prior to positive law. So, in other words, if it is a limit on power that exists before government writes anything down. So I know ANCOM kind of went back and forth between what the difference between legal and moral is, but positive law kind of recognizes that a natural right, it recognizes a natural right to protect it or violate it, but it does not create it. So the distinction matters because if rights only come from our government, then government can take them away whenever they become inconvenient. If a right that disappears the moment power dislikes it is not really a right at all. It's just a permission slip. So natural rights are the moral standards by which we judge whether laws are just or unjust. Freedom of speech qualifies as a natural right because it's grounded in human personhood, agency, conscious, moral responsibility. Human beings are rational and communicative creatures. We think, we judge, believe, worship, create, criticize, etc. So speech is the public exercise of those capacities. I think it's hard to argue otherwise, and it's a conscious made visible to people. If people have a natural right to think and form moral judgments, then they also must have a natural right to express those judgments. Otherwise, conscious is just trapped inside of the individual and made powerless in public life. Speech is necessary for limited, legitimate government. Citizens cannot meaningfully consent to government if they cannot debate laws, criticize leaders, expose corruption, advocate reform, or persuade one another. Government cannot be the very source of the very liberty needed to challenge government. So if the state creates the right to criticize the state, then the state can revoke that right as soon as criticism becomes threatening. And that's not really liberty. That's basically authoritarianism or domination. So now arguing that speech is a natural right does not mean that arguing speech is absolute. Threats, fraud, coercion, direct incitement, and harassment are not the core of free speech. They are abuses of communicative power, so we can acknowledge that. But boundaries don't disprove the right itself. The right of liberty does not include kidnapping. The right to property does not include theft. Likewise, for free speech, does not include using words that are a direct tool of violence, coercion, or fraud. So my position is pretty simple. Freedom of speech is natural because it arises from what human beings are. They're rational, moral, communicative peoples, and government may protect it or violate it, but it cannot be the source of it. Freedom of speech is not a favor from power. It is a moral limit on power. So I'll end my time there.
All right. Good stuff. Tyler, who's going to cross-examine Castle?
I am.
All right, perfect. Wow, that's some weird Inception shit. All right, there we go. 3 minutes is on the clock for you now, Tyler. Go ahead and jump after it.
All right, Castle. Can the government take away the First Amendment tomorrow if 2/3 of the people agree?
Could they take away the First Amendment tomorrow? Sure, they can take away amendments. They wrote the amendments, so.
And they wrote in mechanisms to change or take away those amendments. Speaking of that, how do you agree with the ruling of Citizens United?
My take on Citizens United, I don't know if you were asking that because we had the debate on that, but I thought that Citizens United was rightly decided. I don't know
Okay, all right, just
where we're
throw that
going
out
with
there.
this, but
No,
okay.
no, going nowhere. I was just curious. So if the is the government being able to directly challenge your freedom of speech and take it away tomorrow, not the exact same thing the prompt is, showing that this inalienable rights theory is nothing more than just the flat earth theory of morality?
Are you saying that the government having the right to take that our amendment of free speech, of First Amendment away, is there also natural right to free speech?
No,
Does
that's
that
their way of saying free speech can now be policed.
if the government wants to say that they can police free speech, that's one thing, but it doesn't mean that free speech itself is inherently unnatural. It still exists naturally.
Okay.
Again, I
So
think
let's
that we're
move on.
talking about like what
Hold on,
government.
reclaiming my time. Reclaiming my time. I got my answer.
All right.
Are all natural are natural rights inalienable?
No, some natural rights are inalienable, but some aren't. So free speech and life, liberty, pursuit of liberty are two that are in the same. But for instance, self-defense would be something that is natural but not inalienable.
Now, if I commit a willful act that forfeits my rights, can they be taken from me?
If you commit a willful act that the government forcefully takes your rights away from, what's the question? I'm trying to understand
If
a
I
little better.
commit an act, do I forfeit my rights? Are they then alienable in some way, shape, or form? Can they be removed from me?
Your right to life. Well, I guess if we're talking about just in the U.S., we do have the death penalty, but I also disagree with I also disagree with that law. So technically, the government can
What
kill
is
you
the
for whatever
only
crime you
punishment?
committed.
What is the only punishment for any crime mentioned in the Constitution?
What is the only punishment?
Yes, it's the death penalty for treason. I'm not playing trivia with you here. Sorry about the pop quiz. So the death penalty is written into the Constitution that the government can deprive you of life if you do certain things that are bad. Now, how do we come up with laws? Is that based off of inalienable rights, or is that based off of the democratic morality of the time, electing people to change the laws? If we do that, how can we make something like abortion legal that ends a human life, that goes against life and liberty, just because it isn't old enough to have its own say?
Yeah, so I think that's actually a good question for how the founders came up with the amendments, the Constitution, all of that, because I think inherently they butt heads a lot on what natural rights are and what they came up with, what rights we have as American citizens are. So to your point about the death penalty, for example, or treasonous activity that can bring a U.S. citizen to be killed for that, I think that kind of goes against what a natural right can even be. So that's why our point about what is legal and what is natural are two totally different things. The government can say something, and we disagree with that assumption about what the government is doing here. So I think that's why it's wrong to assume what the government says is right means that that's what free speech is, or that's how we exercise our rights.
Right. Good stuff. We're going to go ahead and kick it over to you now, Tyler. Chance for you to open. 3 minutes is on the clock. I'll start it when you start to talk.
Hey, everybody. We're here to talk about free speech and it being a natural right or not. So, to me, this seems like just a preference that we're calling natural rights. We have a non-falsifiable theory based off of nothing because it's not something you can prove. There's nowhere written into your DNA that you have these rights inherently. It's just, we're saying this and it comes from our faith and you just have to accept that God's real and he gave us these rights. And then we can start the conversation there. It's just this absolutely disingenuous, unfalsifiable framing that we're just going to flat out reject. Tomorrow, if the government wants, they can end your right to free speech. Right now, one party is trying to limit the First Amendment because they don't like the outcome of Citizens United. So we're showing you right now with our government that your First Amendment rights can and will be limited if enough people care. We call my stance legal positivism. What that is looking at, it's basically like economics of moral theory. You look at the world and you make assessments off of it. You don't try to fit the world into this narrow pigeonhole that you've incepted out of nowhere. Natural rights were just the rights that were important at the time, and those changed. Today we talk about housing, food, and other things being rights. These other things that we've had for so long, we just take them as granted and we've moved on to other things. Doesn't mean they're not useful, doesn't mean they're not good, but they were just what was pertinent at the time, and the argument needed to be what it was to get them how they were, because this theory isn't like gravity. It's not something we can measure, we can prove. It's not made off of a scientific data. It's literally just people saying, because God did this, this now happened, and now we have these rights, deal with it. And they won't let you challenge any of the premises that they got there. It's literally flat earth theory of morality. Tonight, we are going to kind of get beat over the head with that theory. But I want you to pay attention. As they're citing word for word what we've known since Locke, listen to practical reality. Listen to what they're saying and then think about how the world actually works. These two things aren't lining up at all. They just have a theory that's their preference. At the end of the day, that's all it is. In reality, we have a monopoly on violence by the state. The state is what gives you those rights. And you can say, oh, I don't like that, or oh, that's not right, or oh, that makes tyranny something that can be achieved slightly easier. But at the end of the day, no, it doesn't. It's going to be just as tyrannical under your system. You're just going to say, hey, you don't have the right to do that. And they're going to say, why? You're going to say, because that's what I interpreted the Bible to say, so you don't. There's no genetic coding. There's nothing written down. You can't point to me a fucking inalienable right. And the whole of humanity's existence shows us that they don't actually exist. So, I don't know. At the end of the day, to me, Locke's distinguishment between inalienable and inalienable and what the fuck was it? Forfeiting your rights is basically saying you can't give away your rights, but we can take them from you. It's a distinction without a difference, and we're just going off a crazy fringe theory that should have died years ago.
All right, Doomer. You are going to be up to cross-examine Tyler. I will put 3 minutes on the clock for you. Go ahead and jump on in.
Would you say enforcement creates a right or does it secure the right?
Enforcement secures the right. The will of the people is what makes it.
I'm sorry, my headset cut out right when you started talking. Could you say that again?
Yeah, enforcement maintains the will of the people, and the creation of the physical right itself as a piece of legislation is what creates it.
So you say that the will of the people, did that exist before the enumeration of a right?
I don't know.
I would say if it's the source is the will of the people, that's not really the source is getting it from the government. That's people existing before the government enumerates that right. That's what you're saying. Would you say if a dictatorship legalizes punishment for dissent, does that just eliminate the right, or does it violate any kind of rights there?
Well, that's up to what their moral compass is in their particular nation. I would say, according to mine, if I were to look onto that, absolutely. But from their perspective, absolutely not. You can see countries like Iran where that's perfectly acceptable.
So, in your opinion, like Saudi Arabia, when it Jamal Khashoggi, that was not violating any kind of rights that he had?
By my definition, yes. Potentially by their definition, no, because morality is subject to the circumstances, the culture of an area, the era that they're in, kind of year-wise. There's a lot of different factors that go into it.
So would you say in your view, laws just can't be unjust then? If the law is in place, it's there?
I didn't say that. I could have my definition of what justice is, and things that don't fit my definition of justice can absolutely be unjust. But other places get to decide in their sovereign nations what they conceive justice as. If you go to a Sharia country, their version of justice and what is just and correct is different than ours. If you go to almost any country that's not a Western democracy, you're going to see that same idea form. Did I lose you?
No, I'm trying to find the clock. Horse's camera isn't working in Discord for me. No, I think I get what you're saying. I just don't agree that morality should be completely subjective based on culture. All good. I think we're getting lost on natural rights just change based off of where you're at. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't like that it's this way, but this is the reality. I don't like that there's no deity in the sky, and I'm not going to go to heaven when I die. Everyone's going to forget I exist in 100 years. It doesn't sound good. It doesn't make you feel good. It doesn't mean it's wrong.
I guess I end my crosshair. That works for me.
All right, so Doomer, clock is going to be on you. 3 minutes. Go ahead and start it up for your opening, sir.
Yeah, so I think we've heard some more specific definitions of what natural rights are. I really just want to bring it back to more of like a common sense understanding. A natural right is simply like a right that exists independently of the government. Governments can recognize these rights, they protect these rights, they can violate these rights, but they aren't the source that create them. And you can even see this in traces that's in the Constitution itself. The First Amendment doesn't say the government grants you this right to free speech. It says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. That freedom of speech exists outside of the government granting you that right or something. That's just something it respects. The assumption behind that language is that it already belongs to the people and the government's just being restrained from interfering in it. And that distinction is what matters. Because if rights only exist when governments create them, governments can never really truly violate these rights. They really only redefine these permissions. That's why apparently if Khashoggi gets murdered for whatever speech he gives, apparently that's right for some people. Under that view, like Khashoggi, a dissident in an authoritarian country doesn't have any rights violated when they're silenced. They simply lose that privilege and get the chainsaw. Most of us reject that conclusion instinctively. Some of us don't, I guess. We believe that people can be treated unjustly even when the law permits it. We believe that abolitionists were right before society agreed with them. We believe that dissidents can have rights when governments suppress them. That language is of natural right. Now let's bring it to speech specifically. Speech is not just noise. Speech is how humans belong, or sorry, speech is how human beings reason with each other. It's how we criticize authority. It's how we defend ourselves. It's how we persuade others, like today. It's how we express conscience, challenge injustice, and participate in general life. A government can leave your private thoughts alone while still preventing you from expressing them. But if you can only think about what you want and never question, criticize, persuade, dissent publicly, your freedom exists only inside your own head. The affirmative is not arguing that every speech act is protected. Obviously, threats, fraud, coercion, that kind of stuff is different. Our claim is much simpler. The liberty to express one's thoughts does not begin when the government grants permission. It begins with the person. That's why freedom of speech is a natural right.
And now it is your turn. Adventurous. Cross-examination or rebuttal. 3 minutes is on the clock to use as you see fit. I'll start the clock when you start to talk. You are muted.
Yeah. Okay. So, Doomer, I notice there's some overlap, but some inconsistency between your team's definition of natural right. For example, Circa's opening, a basic moral claim rooted in human nature, rational agency can't be separated from human nature. Hang on, sorry, that's not the second thing isn't the definition part. So Circa's definition of basic moral claim rooted in human nature. Castle's opener, a natural right is a moral claim prior to positive law. Your opener, a natural right exists independent of the government. So again, there it feels like there's a lot of things that are kind of pointing in the same direction, but I want you to try to restate it for me like you're explaining it to a child.
Restate what? My specific view on like what is a natural right?
Yeah, what your team's definition of a natural right is.
I can't speak for the entire team, but I will give you kind of my more broad definition than what they gave. I think they gave more of like a philosophical definition. I'm trying to appeal more to the layman's sense of how we understand it, that it's just a right that exists separate from governance. The government, just like free speech, how 1A is written, the Congress shall make no law abridging freedom of speech. It does not outlie that, the Constitution gives you this positive right to freedom of speech.
Okay, got
That's
it.
why it would
So
be a
you're
natural
telling
right.
me that this is something that exists prior to and outside of government enforce it.
Correct.
Okay, so if I come along and you say something I don't like and I bash your face in, where's your right to speech then?
Uh, it would be violated with you doing that act of violence upon me for my speech.
Okay, but do you see how you didn't
Enforcement
actually?
enforcement is not the creation of the right. Like, if you did that, would you think society
Yeah,
in
you're
general would view
asserting
you
that
violated
based
my
on what?
freedom of speech?
You're asserting that based on what? You say that enforcement isn't the creation of the right, but if no one enforces the right, how do you even say it exists?
Essentially, isn't that argument just right is or might is right?
And can you prove that wrong?
Yeah, society doesn't agree with that in general. People see an inherent right to things like freedom of speech, liberty, pursuit of
Oh, so
happiness. That's
now
why it's
so now
written into our
society
constitution
dictates what a right
to be
is.
recognized, not granted to you.
So now
Yes,
society
society
dictates what a right is.
recognizes that right. If they
Society
recognize that
recognizes
right,
the right.
they are not
Okay,
necessarily
so
the
now we
source of
come
that
back
right.
to so now we
It
come
comes
back
back to
to
like morality
where
kind
does
of
this right
argument.
exist? Outside of the government saying you have it and enforcing it, where does this right actually exist?
Sorry, say that one more time.
Outside of the government saying you have it and enforcing it, where does this right actually exist?
It's just something you possess. Would you say that you don't have a right to life or liberty or pursuit of happiness, anything like that?
I wouldn't say any of those things necessarily. I'm asking you the question. I'm asking a burden of proof.
What was the question? How does it exist?
Hmm.
Actually, I'm not seeing your point of view. Like, it's just a rational agency, morality. Like, if you want to get into like those specifics, we can, but you're just asking like what is morality?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not asking what is morality. That's a slightly separate question than whether or not rights exist. I asked if no one enforces it, I can't touch your rights, I can't smell your rights, I can't read your rights written on stone, I can't any of these tangible things your rights, and these rights seemingly didn't exist for the first upteenth hundreds of thousands of years for human history because they only existed post liberal enlightenment philosophy, how can you tell me this is a natural right? How can you tell me it exists at all?
Because they're normative claims in society. I think you're still like making the same
So
kind of
now we're
argument
back
we
to
just
so
did in
now we're
previous
back to
weeks where
society says.
slavery was
Got it.
actually based back in the day.
So now we're back to society says it. Got it.
Right.
Yeah, society recognizes it. They are not the source of it.
All right. So 3 minutes is on the clock now for you, Zach. Go ahead and start the clock. It is your opening.
We, the people of the negative position, hold these truths to be self-evident. That natural rights do not exist, especially within a secular or atheist framework, and even upon the acceptance of the grounding of such rights within deity, that these rights are alienable, seizable, and conditional, and therefore cannot be natural. We hold that the proposition, therefore, that freedom of speech is a natural right is clinically retarded. In following with such self-evident deduction, we firmly state that natural rights is an oxymoron, as rights are a man-made thought construct, and therefore cannot be held to be a natural phenomenon. To assert that something is natural is to be able to ground it in empiricism. But alas, where are these rights? Are they in the room with us right now? I surely think not, except in so far as the authority of the state, which through its monopoly of legal force imposes the thought construct of rights upon us, is with us in the room right now. Without a government to enforce these nebulous and illusory rights, they would simply vanish into the ether of memory, and ultimately into oblivion from whence they came. We hereby and forthwith challenge our opposition to demonstrate that 1. These natural rights exist at all, 2. That freedom of speech ranks among them, and 3. That they are not silly Bo Billies for holding on to such farcical and whimsical claims. Thank you.
All right. So 3 minutes is on the clock, Circa, for cross-examination. Go ahead and get in there.
Does a right have to be a physical object to be real?
No, something does not have to be a physical
Okay,
object
then
to
the
be real.
objection that rights are not physical objects is pretty stupid, isn't it?
No, because you're claiming it's a natural right.
Does
And
a
if
right
something is
have to
natural,
be absolute to be real?
does a right have to be absolute to be real? Well, by definition, if it's a right, it is absolute.
That's not true. We're not asking for an absolute thing. We're not saying unalienable. We're saying natural rights. They're different things. If you didn't know that, that's probably not good. But you do know that rights don't have to be absolute to be real, right?
Again, if you're saying it's a natural right, then it's something that cannot be taken away from you because it exists from the
That's
outset.
not what natural right means. You're talking about inalienable right.
Really? Because
that's not what a
Doomer's
natural
opening,
right
a
is.
natural right exists prior or independent
That is
of
not
the
what Doomer
government.
said. I don't really care about your
I'm
little
quoting him directly. A
gestalt.
natural right is a right that exists independent of the government. Castle's opener, a natural
That's
right
great.
is a moral
Okay,
claim
we're gonna
prior
move
to
on, my
positive
friend.
law. A limit
We're gonna
on
move on.
power that exists prior to government. Natural rights are moral standards by which we judge laws.
We're gonna
to
move
be
on.
just
Can
or
you shut
unjust.
up?
You don't like him? Don't like me quoting your team?
Okay, so does a government create natural liberty or preserve it?
Does a government promote natural liberty? One more
Create.
time.
I said create.
Create or preserve it.
Mm-hmm.
A government preserves whatever rights and privileges it grants to its population.
Okay, so speech should not be treated as a mere government-created privilege, right? If it belongs to the exercise of rational agency.
That's an
Correct?
ought claim. Can you back it up?
Yeah.
Really? Go for it.
Okay, is speech merely just like noise? Is it just a sound?
Well, it depends on how you define each little
Well,
word.
why
there.
don't you tell
Speech
me
is,
how
in
it's supposed to
fact,
be then? Why don't you try and define it for
speech
me?
is in fact just a sound. It's just that through the
It's just a sound?
communal use of that sound, we have
Is it
all
reason giving?
agreed through our social dynamics that certain sounds mean certain things. But you can absolutely reduce
So it's
speech
reason
at
giving,
an
correct?
empirical
Is speech
level to just
reason
a
giving?
sound.
Is speech reason giving?
No, reason predates speech.
I said, is it reason giving? Does speech induce
No,
a reason?
if reason predates speech, then how could speech
That's
be
not what I'm asking you.
reason-giving?
Can you fucking pay attention? Does
I am paying
speech,
attention. I'm answering your question very directly.
does it give reason? When people talk, is there a reason behind it?
Not always.
Okay, not always, but if it is reason giving and just a behavior, then doesn't it mean that it belongs to rational agency and not something that is state administered?
Do crows have rational agency?
It's irrelevant. We can move on now. I think that's your answer.
Right. So we're gonna go ahead and go straight into our into our champion rounds. That was fun, and I actually am kind of sad that you guys aren't going to be in the champion ring together. Instead, though, we are going to start out with let's see. Boom. Looks like this is going to be our first pairing for the champion rounds. That is Doomer and Ancom. You guys did not face each other in the cross examine phase. So I'm going to put 10 minutes on the clock. Freedom of speech is a natural right. Please, gentlemen, go ahead and pick it apart.
All right. So, Doomer, you said in your opening that rights exist independently of the government, and you said that this was the common sense understanding of the term, right?
I'd say it's my more common sense way of putting it. I wouldn't say it's like a known common sense framing or whatnot.
Okay, fair enough. So you don't think that's how most people perceive of the concept of rights?
Of natural rights, yes.
Okay. And another thing I heard you do a lot in your opening is you seemed to conflate freedoms with rights. Assuming you don't believe those to be the same thing, can you give me the definition or the definitional difference between a freedom and a right?
I would say like in this context, the freedom would recognize the right, like the First Amendment gives Congress the limit on kind of capping your freedom of speech. So the freedom is the thing that you inherently have. That's the natural right. And obviously the laws.
Wait. Hold on, because again, you just conflated the two. You said the freedom is the thing you naturally have. That's the natural right.
Well, yeah, that's what the prompt
But
is
again,
about. Freedom of speech
right?
is a natural right.
Yes, I'm saying that a freedom is a freedom, but a right is so. In fact, you actually said it perfectly. The First Amendment limits the government's ability to restrict your speech. That is the right. Yeah, I have the freedom to speak, but if someone comes along and physically stops me, then I clearly have no right to speech, do I?
Sorry, I didn't quite follow. I think you're saying
Yeah.
like I think we're
What
getting
I was saying is
conflated on
I have
the difference of like freedom and right, and they're kind of synonymous, I guess, to me. Like Congress is
okay, so
is limited in
that's
saying
interesting.
is abridging the freedom of speech. Like the First Amendment
Yeah,
isn't the freedom of speech. It's just Congress's
yeah.
limit on abridging your freedom of speech.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I'm saying that a freedom and a right are different things. Freedom is just whatever you can do. A right is whatever is whatever someone is obligated to protect you to do or protect you from, right? So we've got different concepts of rights, but in all cases, they're things that are about the government protecting your freedoms in some way. That's functionally speaking, that's what a right seems to be throughout all of history, throughout all of just the way that we think about rights. When people talk about human rights, they're saying these are the things that should be protected by the government. That is the general sense in which people use the concept of rights. And so if there is no government authority, if there is no form of power to enforce and protect those rights, then how could we really say they exist? Freedoms
Well,
are
do you think
one
they
thing.
only exist if it's enforced? You don't think
I
like if
mean, what is a right that is not enforced? What is
a
it
right that's
like?
violated?
Reality, what does a right do? A freedom, we can obviously
A
say
right
a
doesn't
freedom.
do anything. A
You
right is something that you can hold or whatever. Obviously, it's been mentioned a million times. It's not a
yeah,
physical thing you hold. It's
no,
something,
obviously
yeah,
it's a
but it can
construct,
be
right? It's
violated. The
a
fact that
social
it can be
construct.
violated, it may be violated. Its violation doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Do you
Okay,
believe
but
you have a
then
right to life? A natural right to life? Do you
no, I
believe you
believe
have
I
a
have the
natural right to
freedom to live.
exist?
No, I just exist. Like that's just a fact of my reality. I have a freedom to exist. Now, do I want someone to
And that
take
exists
that
separate from
freedom
the
away from me?
government. I would
No.
say that's a natural right, correct?
No, that is just a thing that exists. That is my freedom. But the thing is, I'm making a very strict distinction between freedoms and rights. Freedoms are things that I naturally have. Rights are things that have to be protected to have any effect whatsoever.
So
To
would you say
be
liberty can be real even when it has limits?
say that again?
Can
Because
liberty be
now you're
real even
throwing
when
in
it has limits?
now you're throwing in a new term into this debate.
Oh, I'm
You're
sorry. Yeah, I
throwing
thought
in
you were bringing up
liberty.
liberty.
No, no, I like right now we're talking about freedoms and rights. Now, I would consider freedom and liberty to be largely synonymous. When you have the freedom to do something, you have the liberty to do something. Given that I
Would you
believe
say
the words
do you think
freedom
you
and
have a
liberty
freedom
have
to liberty? Is
etymologically
that just a nonsense
similar
sentence to
roots.
you?
Say again?
Would you say that there's a freedom to liberty, or is that just like a nonsense sentence to you?
I would say it's tautological. You're saying you have a freedom to freedom or a liberty to liberty. It's tautological.
Do you think that you have a freedom to exist just like in a place, or that the government should be able to kind of like outlaw your existence there, and they would be
Well, I
completely
mean,
moral in that?
we're talking about the difference between freedoms and what the government can do. Governments absolutely can infringe on freedoms. They do it all the time. doesn't mean I don't still have the freedom. It's just
That's
being
what I'm
infringed
saying.
upon.
Yeah,
But the
like
thing is, I'm
like
distinguishing
a
that
natural right,
from
and
a
then we're
right.
saying, well, yeah, I'm saying my view is pretty broad. A natural right's just kind of
Yeah.
existent from government itself. It doesn't have to be given to you by whoever is authoritative of you. They can still take that right from you. They can violate that. That may be wrong. It may be justified in some circumstances, but that's still that's still a natural right that I have. The right to speech, the right to life. I don't know. I view liberty as maybe slightly different than freedom, but I can see your view of how they're synonymous. But yeah, the natural right being there, it's still there. The fact that, a government might be able to trample on it or whatnot, that just makes it wrong. Like when I brought up Khashoggi, like if Saudi
Yeah.
Arabia just
I'm
had
not
that
saying
law
that.
on the books, then it's moral, I
I'm
guess. That's not how I
No,
view
that's the
it.
thing. I'm making a very
Well,
strong
real
distinction
quick,
between
like
morals and
for,
rights
for
as
instance,
well.
I think your shirt is based. I've said it once before. No one is illegal. Yeah, rep that shit.
Oh,
I
you should
agree
see
with
the
this.
whole shirt. No one is illegal on stolen land.
But why
It's
is
great.
that?
I
Do they
mean,
have a natural right to be there?
it's largely a tagline. They have the freedom to move. I mean, I believe very strongly
They have
in
the
the
freedom
freedom
to
to
move.
move. Yeah.
Like when they got kicked out,
No,
they
no.
had the freedom to move out.
People
Or
have the freedom. People have
what are you
freedom of their.
appealing to with no one is illegal there? Is that appealing to the government or some background thing from
Well,
society, like a
it's
natural right
specifically
that
no
they
one
had
is
to be
illegal
there?
on stolen land. So the on stolen land part is kind of important in that, but I don't want to get too sidetracked.
Well,
When I'm
what does
saying
it
no one is
matter?
illegal
If
on stolen,
society's granting them the right to be there or not be there, it's on them. The right doesn't exist separate from them, is what you're saying. If natural rights don't exist.
what I'm saying is that the concept of no one is illegal, people can do illegal things. But can you say that their existence is illegal? Can you outlaw someone's existence? I mean, I
No, I
suppose
think that
that's
their
what we
existence here
do
would be
when
like a natural
we.
right.
I assume that.
It doesn't have to be
Well,
given by the government.
I figure that's what we do when we execute people. Is we outlaw their freedom to exist
Well,
in
yeah,
that
some
specific
of those
case.
are justified, and we can grant that. Like, not all freedom, like not freedom of speech doesn't mean all speech is legal. It's not like an absolutionist claim. I'm definitely not one of those people. Obviously, can't say fire in a movie theater, cause a riot, do threats, coercion, any of that. Just like the state can deprive you of life if you go out and murder 20 people. That doesn't make it not a natural right.
Yeah, but again, even if I accept for a moment that that natural rights exist and that life is among them because it has been the most common the most common item denoted in that, we have a clear practical reason for protecting life beyond, the
But why do we
natural
have
right.
that? What does that come from?
Because we have decided as a culture that we want to protect life. That is a decision that we as a society have made. It's not necessarily
Where does that
natural
society get it
in and of
from?
itself through intersubjective discourse.
Is it some kind of like
Like
intuitive
I'm not saying
natural
that we
thing that
don't
we have?
decide things through speech. That would be absurd. But like all of these things that we call rights, the things that we decide to protect, those are the things that we have decided as humans, i.e., artificially,
Yes.
to
Not
consider as
artificially, very
rights.
naturally, actually.
Oh, that's okay. So, what does it mean to be natural versus
I think
artificial,
at their
right? The
time,
the
but
general consensus is that natural exists apart from and independently of humans. Artificial
not
are those
humans.
things we
I've been saying
create.
independent from government. The right isn't sourced from the government giving it to you.
Well,
It's
no,
a
no,
thing
but
that we
but
all
we're
intuit and
talking
kind
about
of as a society together
talking about
recognize.
the term
It's
natural itself, right? Not necessarily the natural right. I'm saying
oh no,
the
I was just saying that
distinction.
because I thought you were saying artificially to kind of dodge the fact that you might have wanted to say naturally there.
No, no, I'd like I would
But
be
either way,
fine
I think that's our
calling
time
something
there.
like freedom of speech an artificial right. Absolutely, that's fine.
It is indeed
But
your
I would not
time,
call
but
it
I
a
was
natural.
I was enjoying it and I didn't want to jump in and interfere. So I
Sorry.
was gonna I was gonna let that keep cooking. So But okay, great job, gentlemen. That was a fucking blast. Enjoyed the hell out of that. So thank you very, very much. All right, so we are now going to go to boom, Castle and Adventurous. Zach and Castle. So 10 minutes is on the clock for you gentlemen now. Go ahead and just jump on in.
Yeah, Castle. So if natural rights are moral standards by which we judge laws to be unjust or just, how is it that like every society in every time period throughout human history has had different standards of law and conduct?
Yeah, so I think that's, again, those different standards come from those governments of the past. So I think we're still confusing what natural rights are and what inalienable rights are. Like, would you agree
I'm not
natural
confusing
rights?
anything. I read your definition.
So do you agree that natural rights come from nature?
No.
Well, that's definitionally what natural rights are, right?
Something that comes from nature has to definitionally exist. I'm asserting the thing doesn't exist. You're asserting it does. I don't see it in nature. You're saying natural rights are moral standards by which we judge laws to be just or unjust, but civilizations all throughout human history have had laws that completely contradicted each other, social norms that completely contradicted each other. If natural rights were so self-evident and existed in nature right there for us to see and observe and adhere, then we would have had a more consistent moral through line, but we don't have that throughout history. Not even close.
Do you think that religion, let's say like Catholic faith, that they understand where rights come from? Where do you think they got those claims from?
Most of the time, any religion, not just the Catholics, but most religions ground any rights they assert to exist in their deity.
Okay, so do you believe that deities can grant rights?
If you grant the existence of the deity, sure.
I mean, do you grant the existence of the deity, or do you claim that your rights come from government solely?
I'm on the negative. I don't need to grant or not grant anything. I'm asking you, the affirmative, to demonstrate natural rights to me.
Well, I'm trying to understand because, for me at least, the way that people have come up with the term natural rights and the way we understand natural rights, um, I would argue that even religions understand this point. But you're saying that we get our natural rights from government itself. So I'm trying to understand
I'm
why
not
you
saying
think.
that.
Well, you
You
were saying that
said,
natural rights aren't real until they're basically imposed on us by governments
no,
based on.
I didn't say until imposed by government. My position is actually natural rights aren't real specifically because they don't seem to manifest until they are enforced by a government. And if they existed prior to the government enforcing them, then you would have some evidence that they existed, now wouldn't you? But oh, that's right. Free speech hasn't been protected in any country ever since the dawn of humanity until the USA, and currently does not exist in any country but the USA. But it's a natural right, though.
Wait, but we know that for the First Amendment, at least in particular, that's not the source of freedom of speech. It's a constitutional protection. It doesn't mean that we can't speak without it, right? Like if we didn't have the First Amendment, would that mean that I can't talk to you?
Well, so now we have to get into a conversation about exactly how we're defining freedom of speech, I guess, because the freedom of speech is not the freedom to use your vocal cords to generate vibrations. That's an empirically measurable thing. That's not what my side is asserting. Freedom of speech is the ability to go out and say a set of things decided by the body law that the government cannot punish you for. And as me and my team have thoroughly illustrated, that hasn't existed in 99.999% of human civilizations. So how can you say it's a natural right? How can you say natural rights exist at all?
Yeah, but I would just say that just because history tells us that previous civilizations or governments didn't understand what a natural right was, doesn't mean that natural rights didn't exist before that or don't exist currently. I mean, when we talk about freedom of speech, it's just a safeguard. The First Amendment is to freedom of speech. It doesn't mean that the government would still go after you necessarily if the First Amendment didn't exist. It would just mean
Would
that
you
there's a
agree?
safeguard that has been repealed.
Would you agree that we can observe things that exist in history?
We can observe things that, sure.
So why don't we see freedom of speech prior to 1776?
You'd have to give me an example. Where did freedom of speech not exist before?
Anywhere.
Well, I don't think that's possible. I mean, there have been books written in history. People have been able to speak freely in other governments hundreds of years
Sure, there
ago.
have been books written in history and people got burned at the stake for them. Sure, there have been books written in history and people were exiled for them. Yeah, the freedom of speech, as I just talked about with being defined by the body law, says you can say whatever you want under these terms without prosecution from the government. Prior to the American government, there was no protection. If the government decided it didn't like what you said, you're hung, you're burned, you're in jail. So again, where did freedom of speech exist before our government? And therefore, how can you say it existed in nature and was observable?
I mean, I just disagree with that premise. If you look back at, let's say, even
He
for like
just
the Salem
disagrees with the
witch,
premise, guys.
well, with the Salem witch trials, do you think that it wasn't just random townsfolk making assumptions about who was a witch or not? I mean, that's not the government. That was just people back then who had a very religious view, who assumed that people who were pagans were somehow against God and must be burned at the stake. I don't know. I don't think that means anything about their speech in particular. I think that just is something that people viewed morally different back then. It had nothing to do with what they were saying. It was how they were viewing religion at the time. So I think you can go back in history and see all sorts of crazy things people were being killed and died over, fought wars over. That doesn't mean that natural speech didn't exist and we weren't born with natural speech. I think that's just a claim that governments were evil back then, and people's perception of freedom of speech and natural speech were wrong back then. No, you
Well,
don't
now
think
you're
that they were
conflating
wrong?
terms. Natural speech is not freedom of speech. Natural speech is not a natural right. So again, I'm asking you to demonstrate where is freedom of speech as grounded in natural rights seen in history prior to 1776. Go.
I mean, you can point to any government. France in 1700s had freedom of speech.
Bold
I mean,
claim. I'm gonna need some sources on that one, bro.
how not? I mean, you could go to ancient Rome.
How
Rome
not?
had public speech options. I mean, people in the Senate and forums, people would write,
Oh my
speak
god.
publicly in the open about philosophy. I mean, were people not just talking back then? Were people silent throughout history?
Bro, they literally killed one of the most famous philosophers and debaters in history because in Greece because they didn't like what he was saying. You ever heard of a guy called Socrates? Like, come on, bro.
Okay, but the fact that people were killed doesn't prove that free speech did not exist as a moral right. It proves governments violated. I feel like we keep confusing that point. The whole point of calling something a natural right is that it can exist even when power refuses to accept that. Don't I mean that this is the whole point about the
And
government not accepting that right.
and see, this is what you're missing. If something doesn't actually protect you from the government, if something doesn't have some kind of tangible physical benefit or tangible social benefit, there's nothing you can point to that says this actually manifested in this situation, then it doesn't actually exist. It's a thought construct. It's something humans made the fuck up.
Oh, well, a right does not have to be physically tangible to manifest itself. You can't point to justice or consent. Like, is
Now
consent
you're getting it.
tangible? Is consent tangible though? innocence until proven guilty. I mean, as physical
Is
objects,
consent a thought construct?
I mean, is consent? What do you mean by that?
You said so. I said rights are a thought construct, and then you brought up consent, bro. It's apples to apples. They're both thought constructs. Bringing
I'm
up
saying
consent
they're
doesn't
not.
prove that rights exist.
I'm saying that they're not physically tangible. So when you're saying like prove to me a natural right exists, I can't prove. You cannot point to justice or consent or equality as physical objects, but they still shape our behavior. They still shape laws that have been passed down to us by governments.
Human thought constructs shape human behavior. I never would have guessed. So, like I was saying, that's really cool, bro. Hey, can you demonstrate that rights actually exist in some form other than we made it the fuck up?
I mean, if you're asking me to show you a physical right, no, I couldn't show you what that looks like as an object. I think we kind of understand how these things exist in human nature. They're just basically similar to what I said about physical things can still be real without them being like what a chair looks like or what a rock is. There are moral limits on what people and governments can do. So you can't just point to justice as a physical object either. You can point to the court system. You can point to protests, punishments. So I just feel like we agree to disagree on this issue, but I just don't think that I can give you the answer you're looking for to say, here is what a natural law looks like. I can only explain it as a concept because that's what it is, just like everything else.
All right. That actually seems like a fairly decent lull in the conversation and a good landing point. So, with that said, we have our last champion round here. And I'm sure that if you guys are keeping score at home, you know what's about to happen. Oh, yeah, that's the ones. Circa and Tyler, you guys are going to be in the room for 10 minutes. Please, gentlemen, try to be reasonable. Start it up when you're ready. Get in there.
I'm fucking ready. Let's go. Okay, so what we've heard tonight is natural rights exist. Trust me, bro. God told me. I don't need to prove shit to you. They take my word for it. They exist. Anytime you don't do what we say, they're violated.
You're muted, Circa.
Circa, would you like to talk about
Tyler, you mentioned Locke in your opening, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you said Locke figured this out with inalienable rights, what were you meaning by that?
I defined that in my opening, but before we get there, can you address my point?
No, I'm curious. I want you to define it again.
Okay, cool. But before we get there, can you address my point that I started with? You just kind of ignored the entire thing that breaks your argument in half, is that you're just saying, trust me, bro, there's nothing to back what you're saying besides God told us. Could you please address that point?
I can actually with Locke.
Okay, well, I'm waiting, and then we'll go to your point, because I asked first. We were given the chance to start. I seized the opportunity like a man
Tyler,
seizes the opportunity. Now,
what
answer
does
my-
Locke say about natural rights?
You're having a hard time hearing me right now. I said answer my fucking point, and then we can go into your question.
Does Locke begin with government or
You're
with
having
man
a
in a
real
state of
hard time
nature?
hearing me right now, Circa. I asked you a question. You don't get to skip over the thing that breaks your argument in half. Now, please address my point, and then I can go into your question. I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, so Locke says natural liberty exists before government.
So
Are
you're
you
going
aware
to
of
dodge
this?
the argument. You don't have a counter argument for the
I
fact
just
that your
answered
entire
it, Tyler.
argument
Can you
is,
stop
"Trust me,
talking?
bro."
Can you stop talking?
Trust me, bro. I'm waiting for an
Locke
answer to the
says
question I
natural
asked.
liberty exists before government. Are you aware of this?
I understand what Locke says. I'm asking you.
Then how come
to
you
tell
said
me
Locke
how
figured it
your
out with
argument is
inalienable
anything
rights?
More than trust me, bro. I'm
Why did you
asking
say Locke
Circa.
said something else?
I'm asking you a question. You're refusing to engage in it because you know you do not have an answer. As soon as you admit this entire thing is based on trust me, bro, God said so, you have to admit that there's nothing backing what you're saying besides a book. So that's the reason why you're not answering any questions and just moving on. I'm not letting this go.
No.
You have to answer my
Again,
point.
Again, natural rights are moral, basic claims rooted in human nature, rational agency, and moral responsibility. They're not physical objects, and they
So
don't
you can't
need to
prove them.
be.
It's just a theory, right?
If
But
you want me to
unlike
measure it,
gravity,
if you
it's not when
want me
you
to
can
measure it, if you want me to measure it like it's a fucking, inch on like a fucking ruler, that's not what's gonna happen.
Yeah, you can't. It's flat Earth. You can't prove it, right? There's no proof behind what you're saying. It's just trust me, bro. Correct?
Again, it's a moral claim.
So yes,
Tyler.
you're saying that.
Can you
we
measure a
have to
moral
trust
claim?
you.
Tyler,
There's
can you measure
nothing-
a moral claim? Can you
That's
measure
what I'm
one?
asking you. That's literally what
Can
I'm
you
asking.
do
in a
humans
complicated way.
naturally do moral
I'm
claims?
asking you, do you have any measurements or proof that this exists, or are we just going off of trust me, bro, God said it?
Is moral claims, are they biology?
I'm not asking that. I'm asking you, Circa, the other debater.
I told
what
you
your
my
stance is, how
claim
your
is a
stance
moral
grounded
one.
factually.
Natural rights are normative moral claims.
So then why can't you just answer my question and no, it's trust me, bro, God said so, because that's what you're claiming. It's a moral claim that comes from God saying these things, right?
No,
Is
it's
that
a
that
moral
hard to
claims
admit?
that exist before positive law says they can.
Who says they can? Who says that? Where do we get those rights?
Certainly not law in my
Where did
normative
we
moral
get those
claim.
rights? Who endowed us with those rights?
No one.
So they just appeared? They just appeared, so you have no way that they formed. It's this non-falsifiable
It is a
thing.
moral
You can
limit on
explain
power
even
grounded
where
in
it came
rational
from.
agency and moral responsibility.
Yeah,
Rational
so
agency
trust
and
me,
moral
bro.
responsibility are how this is grounded.
So again, trust me, bro. This is my preference. There's nothing that actually shows us this is real. It's your preference. Whereas every other nation in human existence has their own preference, do these things differently. To go back to your point about justice, and I want to say that Castle made a similar point about justice. We're not claiming justice is natural. We're claiming justice is a shifting standard that changes.
It's a normative
by nation
claim.
based off of
Justice,
morality.
consent, obligation, legitimacy,
What does
authority, and
justice mean
coercion.
in Afghanistan?
Is
Does it mean the same
authority
thing as
a
justice
fake
in
thing?
America?
Tyler, is
No.
authority a fake thing?
No, authority exists.
Is
I can
obligation a
point to
fake
it.
thing?
Oh, it's a societal, that's a social construct. I wouldn't say it's fake.
What about
but it's
justice?
definitely
Is
something
justice
that
a fake thing?
No, justice is a standard that shifts.
What about
based on
coercion?
each-
You can't measure
You're,
it.
you're not even letting. You're refusing to answer questions, and you're not letting me answer.
Can you measure
yours.
justice, Tyler? Can you measure justice?
You can measure if justice was done based off of this definition of the system you have. Yes, because
And
it's
where do you
grounded in
appeal to
something.
when you're grounding this?
Whatever the morals of that particular nation
Those
decided they
moral
want the justice
claims,
system to
those
be.
moral normative claims you're appealing to, right?
Yes, the society has shifting moral stances.
So my
Each
natural
society
rights
has different-
definition
hold on,
is a
let me
basic
finish the
moral
no,
claim.
No. This isn't cross-examination time. I'm going to finish a statement. So our society dictates what laws we elect representatives. Those representatives go into
And they're based on
office.
what?
Hold
They're
on,
based
I'm
on what?
finishing a sentence. They're based off of what the people decide to be their laws at the time. So if
And where are they
life
appealing
was
to
a
there? What are they
moral-
grounding it in?
Their own particular circumstances, their own particular subjective morality.
It's all relative?
This is
Even
my-
if it is
this-
relative,
yes.
by the way, they can relatively
Yes.
come to this moral claim that's normative. You know that,
Yes,
right?
It's all relative, and they're all different, and no.
So they can
most of the
come
world
to the
disagrees with
moral
you, most
relative
of humanity
claim.
disagrees with you.
They can come to the
They
claim
could
relatively.
hypothetically they could. Yes, there's a
Yeah.
very, very, very small
So
chance.
now
they
a
could, but
natural
none of this
right
refuting
is
my
a
argument.
moral claim that's normative,
No.
grounded in rational agency.
No. You're
and
saying the exception proves the rule, or the exception is the rule. I'm saying the exception proves.
I don't even know what that
You're
means in this
arguing
conversation,
that a
dude.
tiny
What do you mean
percent
exception?
of people. A tiny percent of people could hypothetically come to your claim if they thought enough about it and thought the same way you did. So that now proves all of them are coming from the same claim. That's not true. Morality is subjective. In every nation, it's different. Even people that believe in your definition of objective morality disagree on the definitions or what is actually moral. There is no objective morality.
I have
We're
no
not
idea what the
trusting
hell you're trying to
God's
say right
word
now.
for it.
Now,
I
before
know
you
you don't, because you
filibuster
don't
anymore,
listen. You're just waiting for your next chance to talk.
No,
Bro,
I
you talk
definitely
twice as much as I
do.
have. I haven't even got a sentence out in like 10 minutes.
relax.
Oh, I mean, I want you to answer a fucking question, but you can't.
So, Locke, I answered your question.
You did not. Still
Does
waiting for it.
Locke think that we exist in state of nature or with government? Which one is the
I don't
beginning?
know. I'm not here to argue all of Locke's writing. We're here to argue a completely different
You
prompt.
used
can-
Locke,
as I
which
said
is
in
why
my- it doesn't
which is
matter.
why I'm
I used
asking
Locke
you.
for one sentence. You've asked 4 questions about the dude. As I said in my introduction, and I want this is for the audience, not you. This dude's just going to beat us over the
Why
head
would
with
you
this
invoke
theory
Locke?
that most
Why would you
people
invoke Locke
don't
if you
give a
have
shit
zero
about.
clue what the fuck he said?
Most people don't give a shit about this theory. He's going to beat us over the head with it and never show us how it plays out in practical reality. But in reality,
You're the one who
United
brought it up.
States rejects these natural rights with the existence of abortion. We decided that the existence of human life does not line up with the existence of human rights. We delayed it until birth, basically until the woman says it's a life. We have an arbitrary definition of life based on when a woman says so. The reason for this is if you
Can you
kill
take
a
a
pregnant
Xanax, dude?
woman, if you
Can
kill
you take
a
a
pregnant
Xanax?
woman, yeah, I don't understand you're getting cooked. You don't have a counter argument here. You got to go to
No, I need
AdCom.
you to take a
But
Xanax,
when,
bro.
Yeah, shut up. When we have a woman killed in a car accident, that's 2 murders. That's 2
That's
deaths.
great.
But when that woman decides that's not a baby and she wants to abort it, at the very same point in life, she can say that no longer has human rights. That goes against your national rights. If you're
So
in
does
favor of
Locke
abortion, you're
say that
against
governments
natural
create
rights.
natural liberty, or do they preserve it?
Bro, we're not arguing what Locke said here. We're arguing our own arguments. This is what I said about us. He's
I'm
gonna beat us over the
arguing
head
what
with the
you
theory
said in
and
your
never made
opening.
the point. I already
You said
addressed
this in your
4 of
opening.
Locke. I made 1 sentence about Locke, and it was about
It
the
was more than
difference
one?
between 2 statements he said. You haven't brought up what you're like.
You said Locke
Locke's
figured
name, so
this
let me
out.
ask you about everything
You
he's
said
ever
Locke
written.
figured this out, didn't he?
I talked about the difference between
So
inalienable
why don't you help
and
me understand
forfeit.
it? What did he say?
That's all
Define
I
it for
said.
me.
I said the difference between inalienable and forfeit was a distinction without a difference. That's all I said about Locke. You
No,
haven't
you said he
brought that up
figured it
all.
out. I want you to define it. What you meant by
That's
that?
what I said about Locke. The Locke made a distinction that has no difference between inalienable and forfeit. That's all I said about Locke. And so far, you've asked me 5 questions about the guy. Shit, I don't even fucking know because I don't read that shit. I'm a practical political follower, which is why I'm cooking you on the reality of what happens with rights in the United States and how your non-falsifiable theory is obsolete. The United States doesn't believe it. We reject it with the inception of abortion.
You are talking. That is for sure.
You're not listening. That's why you don't realize that I said 1 sentence about Locke. 1. And I told you what it was about. None of your questions have pertained to that. You're asking me about your stupid theory that nobody believes. I don't know about it. Because I don't believe your stupid theory.
Relax. Insecurity doesn't need to be this gnarly, dude. Relax.
Again, that ad hom doesn't work. You're getting cooked right now because your theory is non-falsifiable. You couldn't answer a single question about it. I've answered 5
Is
of your
coercion?
questions. I'm trying
Is
to hold you to
coercion?
1. Can you answer
Is
one
coercion
question?
a physical
No.
object?
No. We're going back to my 1 question. You've asked 5 already. My question is, do you have anything backing your system besides I say they exist? Trust me, bro.
I already told you.
Proof
My
you can
claim
show
is
us in the
thinner.
world, throughout all of U.S. history, or in the world history, any proof that you can show us that these rights are actually inherent, any civilizations from the past taking specific action, any shared moral compass we can see throughout humanity's history, anything to show us that this is actually true, or are you just saying, I think this is true, so it is?
Okay.
Anything. Do you? I'm asking a question, Circa. I know you ignore people when they talk to you, but I'm asking you a question.
Yeah, I get that.
Do you not have an answer?
No, man. I don't have an
You don't
answer
have a
for you
single
there.
example to back, to show us all throughout human history, any
Because
proof that these rights
because you're making a
are
genetic
natural.
fallacy. Just because people didn't understand it back then or didn't come to the conclusion yet doesn't mean that it's invalid. They still appealed to this normative moral claim, didn't they?
So it's basically, I'm right, trust me, bro. It doesn't matter about history, doesn't matter. Human reactions don't matter. The fact that most people in the world disagree with me doesn't matter. I'm right, trust me, bro. I don't need to prove to you why I'm right. We're just going to accept these things exist. That's all you're saying.
Is coercion a physical object?
I'm not answering until you answer my question, Circa. I'm not going back to your
Is
questionnaire.
coercion
until you
a
answer
physical
my
object?
question. I'm not going back to your questionnaire until you answer my question. You've dodged my
I already
2
did.
questions. And
All right,
asked
we're
me 8.
circling.
No, you dodged.
We're circling. I was going to let y'all keep going because I was hoping we
refuse
were
to
getting
engage.
somewhere. But
Yep,
we were circling a drain there. So that's okay though. We have gotten through our champion rounds. Some of them were definitely scarier than others. But we're going to go through our closing arguments, and on the bright side, Circa, you get to have your first closing argument. So go ahead and nope, you're there. Go ahead and put 3 minutes on the clock for that uninterrupted closing. Finish your thoughts, sir.
Okay. I think we kind of just heard a bunch of Fugazi and abstract thought applied onto what our definition of what natural rights would be. I think all three of us stated it plenty of times, multiple times, in which, once again, I'll do it in the end, okay? A natural right is a basic moral claim rooted in human nature, rational agency, and moral responsibility. That doesn't mean that it is something you can measure like a physical fucking object. It doesn't mean that it's absolute. It only means that some moral claims, freedom of speech in this case, exist before law can recognize them and distort them or violate them. That's it. A civil right is what government recognizes and enforces. Whenever we think of these rights, the ones that we enshrine, and how Doomer poetically put it into words in his opening and his cross-ex, the First Amendment doesn't claim to create it. It enshrines the idea. It's appealing to a ground, a moral normative claim. So again, we're not arguing that, speech is natural because humans make sounds, or that speech is natural because the point is, okay, it is a natural right because it is a public form of agency. That's part of the moral grounding when it comes to rational agency. It means that a human being is not merely just a subject of law to be managed, protected, and administered. It means that a human being can reason, which is why speech is a very important part of this. It's part of judging, dissenting, worship, even criticizing, persuading, refusing. And it also is important to ask if power can justify itself. This is why speech is grounded in my moral normative claim. It is one of the only ways in which a human being can rationally control agency. That's why I don't think it can be reduced to a civil privilege. Civil law can recognize speech, like the First Amendment says and what Doomer says. It can organize it, it can protect it, but it doesn't, it can define its legal boundaries as well, but it does not create the moral fact that a person cannot be treated as a rational agent while the state claims ownership over their public judgment. So I want to point out that a right can be natural without being absolute. Once again, a right can require legal enforcement without being created by law. A right can have religious defenders without defending on religion, and a right can need boundaries without becoming empty. I think the contrast here, when it comes to if rights only come from law, then legal tyranny violates no rights until it changes its own rules. If we use the Rousseau or Burke route, that civil society and inherited wisdom and continuity and prudence is how rights are determined, that's not going to ground them. It's circular, and if an institution like slavery exists, then technically they're not violating any rights. They have to appeal to some moral normative claim beyond that exists independent of government. If speech is only a civil privilege, right, then dissent exists only by permission, completely invalidating one's rational agency. If consciousness may exist only silently, then the state has not protected conscience, it has just confined it. I think natural rights as an account is stronger. And I think I'll just end it again on what I mean with our definition, because it keeps getting changed into something else. It is a moral normative claim rooted in human nature, rational agency, and moral responsibility. It exists before law recognizes it and limits legitimate political authority. That's it. I'll end it there.
All right. Yeah, we went a little over there, but again, I'm always going to let you guys keep cooking if you're going somewhere. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and go over to you now, Ancom. 3 minutes is on the clock for your uninterrupted closing. Let us hear it, sir.
Give me 1 second. Just need to
take your time.
It's funny because I typed something in the chat that I really wanted to use here, but now I can't find the damn thing. Oh well. All right. Anyways, So in this debate, we have been hearing the affirmative conflate a number of different terms: freedom, ability, right. The problem with these is that while you can say that a natural freedom exists because we are naturally able to do many different things, and without constraint, we have the freedom to do those many things. But you would never say that a freedom is indicative of a right. I have the freedom to kill someone. I have that ability, and I have the natural freedom to use my own reason to determine my own moral responsibility to take the life of another person. No one would argue with the fact that me having that ability means I also have the right to do that. This is not where we functionally derive rights from. Rights have always been, throughout history, determined by what freedoms are and are not protected by whoever is holding the monopoly on violence in your region, what I and many anarchists would refer to as the state. Rights do not exist separate from the state. Freedoms do, ability does, rights do not. This is the main crux of my argument, because to use any other definition of right leads you to just conflating rights and freedoms, rights and abilities. And we know that that is patently absurd. There is a particular way in which we mean this word right that means calling it natural doesn't make sense. No matter how you ground the right philosophically, whether it be out of reason or whether it be from God, which I recognize none of my opponents did, whatever it is, there is still the fact that what humans have determined are and are not rights for the people has shifted drastically across the ages. And we have a very particular understanding of them today that we cannot necessarily trace back through history, but we do recognize there are things that were not moral, but that were not protected in the way that we have rights today. That's my argument.
All right. Thank you very much there. So, Castle, you are up next, sir. 3 minutes is on the clock for your closing. I'll start it when you start.
Yeah, so kind of fitting to what Ancon was saying at the end about the word natural and how that word itself can kind of make people feel confused about how it relates to something tangible, or who gives that right to us, or is it something that you can see or see throughout history, whatever it may be. But when we think about the word natural, if you want to use a different word, whether it's logical or reasonable or instinctive or essential, these are all synonyms of the word natural, and we would all agree, I would assume, that we believe that those are logical rights to have, the right to free speech or the right to speech. And so I think whatever term you want to use, we kind of understand it. I think we just have a fundamental disagreement on what that looks like. Are rights merely permissions from power of government, or are there moral limits on power? I think history can provide evidence that humans have repeatedly recognized certain moral claims, but it doesn't mean that history makes those claims true. And I mentioned it too earlier on in the debate, but slavery existed for thousands of years. If rights were just based on only history or tradition, then slavery would have a strong claim to legitimacy. So we say slavery was wrong despite its long history because it's violating that human personhood, liberty as well, and human agency. So I think that I'm not arguing that free speech is a natural right because it has always been protected historically. I think that was another thing is like, well, name a time throughout history where we've had free speech. I'm arguing that history shows why the right matters, why the right itself matters. While human personhood explains why that right exists, I think that's a strong argument for it. So, it is a moral claim prior to positive law. I mentioned that. The way my opponents say that because rights are recognized through different legal systems, they can't be natural. But again, I would argue it just confuses legal enforcement with moral existence, and that governments enforce rights, they define rights, and they sometimes violate those rights. So, but it doesn't mean that they create the moral worth of a human person. If, freedom of speech fits that standard because speech is the public exercise of rational agency, and human beings think, judge, believe, worship, create, and persuade. So speech is conscious, made public. If people have the natural right to reason and form moral judgments, then they must also have the natural right to express those judgments. So speech must exist before legitimate government because citizens cannot consent to, criticize, or resist government unless they can speak freely, and government cannot be the source of the very right needed to challenge government. I'll finish off by saying that speech is natural does not mean it's absolute. So I know I mentioned this earlier, but threats, fraud, coercion, and indictment are abuses of those free speech, and boundaries do not disprove rights. They define their proper use. So freedom of speech is not a favor from the state. It's a moral limit on the state, and government may recognize it, protect it, or violate it, but it cannot be the source of it.
Right. Tyler, sir, you're up next. 3 minutes is on the clock for you. Let's hear your closing.
All right, so this entire argument just rests on them restating this theory over and over, beating you over the head with it, with no actual practical application to reality. Where these rights exist, trust me, bro, ignore all these mechanisms built into government that actually give you rights and can take all these natural rights away from you. These natural rights, they kind of shift around a little bit, but we didn't hear it when we were pressing them for examples. What they did was shift to justice, obligation, language, social constructs, things that man has invented, that man has propped up, and that man has used government to back. Justice is defined by nation to nation based on culture, morality, era, religious beliefs. All sorts of factors go into what that nation determines as justice. In one state, justice could be making sure a woman wears her religious scarf on her head, or in another, that could be the exact opposite of justice. Because these are moral subjectivism is real. It doesn't mean all morally subjective views are equal, but it does mean that each morality is different depending on where you are. Just all we heard over and over was, trust me, bro, zero proof, zero history to back it, zero examples of human action. It's worse than flat earth theory. Flat earth theorists at least try to prove that their theory is right, not this hollow argument. And that's why I kept trying to push Circa on going back to God. Because as soon as you remove God from this argument as it was incepted and intended by our founders and the people that invented it, you made this argument hollow. Turning this into a secular argument, one, removes the creation and origin of these rights, and two, removes any credibility that anything stands behind them. So then it just makes it your personal theory that you can't prove or back, that completely is negated by practical reality on every level. So stripping this argument down to make it secular made it fucking hollow and made it fucking pointless. At the end of the day, I gave plenty of examples. They were just dodged around. I gave the abortion example. In the United States of America, the way we determine what right to life is based on the mother. If the mother decides that baby is going to be born through my legs, that baby now has a legal right to be alive. If that mother gets in a car accident, that's 2 murders. If that mother does drugs and kills the baby, she gets charged with murder, even though it's still in her womb. But she could also choose to not have that baby and abort it up until the time of birth. Right before birth, she can get an abortion in several states. That to me tells us that we judge when that new human being has the right to life based off the decision of the mother, not based off the fact that a new individual human being exists. Thus, natural rights are not being practiced in the United States or anywhere, and our actual rights, how we jurisdict life, comes from law, comes from states in particular in this instance, passing the laws that the people want there. States that see abortion as immoral get to make that choice with their voters. States that don't see abortion as immoral get to make that choice with their voters. We have a 50-state experiment. That's how it's always worked. We can show you the origin of these rights. We can show you how they're enforced. We can explain all of this to you. It's right in front of your eyes. Their only argument is, trust me, bro. To Castle's argument points out about speech being required before government. I just want to point out that every single successful revolution happened in a nation that did not guarantee free speech at all. So speech was something that was done despite the government making it illegal. Thus, it's not a right. It's just an action people do.
All right. So we are now going over to you, Doomer. 3 minutes is on the clock for your closing, sir. Go ahead and start it up.
Yeah, tonight the negative spent most of its time arguing that natural rights don't exist. And I think that really matters because if you accept that framework, then rights become nothing more than permissions granted by governments or institutions. But ask yourself what follows from that. If rights only exist because society recognizes them, then abolitionists were not defending rights when they said slavery was illegal. Dissidents in authoritarian countries are not having their rights violated when they're silenced. They simply lack whatever permission society has chosen to grant them. I don't think most people actually believe that. Most people believe that governments can be wrong. Most people believe that societies can be unjust. Most people believe that if a person can be denied a right, even when the law says otherwise. The reason we believe these things is because we instinctively understand the difference between rights and powers. The negative repeatedly pointed out that natural rights don't exist because they can't stop a prison cell, a censor, or some kind of government decree or law. That's true, but rights have never been a description of power. They're a standard by which we judge that power. A right doesn't stop existing because it's violated. In fact, the entire reason we talk about rights today is because they can be violated. And that brings us back to speech. Speech is how human beings participate in public life. It's how we challenge authority. It's how we expose corruption. It's how we persuade others. It's how we defend ourselves against those who hold the power over us. Government can prevent someone from speaking, but it can't become the source of that person's thoughts, conscience, or ability to reason. The question before us was never whether governments can suppress speech. Of course they can. The government is whether the liberty to express one's thoughts begins with the government permission or with the individual. Our side, the affirmative, has argued that governments may recognize that liberty, protect it, they can violate it, but they do not create it. They are not the source of it. The negative's answer is that rights exist only because institutions or governments say they do. Our answer is that rights are the very thing that we use to judge whether those institutions are acting justly in the first place. If rights only exist when power approves of them, then the rights are not protections against power at all. They're merely descriptions of it. For that reason, and because the freedom to express thought is inherent to human agency and conscience, freedom of speech is a natural right. Thank you.
All right. And last but not least, Zach, final thoughts, sir. 3 minutes to bring it home.
What my opponents fail to realize is that many men much smarter than any of us here today realized this a long time ago. You have no rights absent God to ground them. You have no morality absent God to ground it. The very ideas created by Enlightenment thinkers that exist around the arguments for natural rights, inalienable rights, whatever terminology you want to use, were grounded in a creator deity. Without deity, you have zero grounding for any concept of rights or morality or any of the things that we've discussed here tonight. And everything reduces to societal consensus and preference, as is proven by the body history. Our opponents failed to demonstrate natural rights exist absent God, or even if, and they didn't even try to make an argument for God grounding them. They failed to demonstrate that freedom of speech is such a natural right. They made a lot of assertions and asked a lot of questions about the consequences of the negative position, but they never proved anything. It was just a lot of, well, if rights don't exist, is that a world you want to live in? Yeah, but that doesn't prove it exists. You're asking about the consequences of a chain of deduction. You're not making an argument. I cede my time.
Okay. Right on. Well, so I got to say, this debate was exactly as fucking interesting as I hoped it would be, but it was also just as infuriating as I hoped it would be. So, that said, I'm going to drop the link for everybody to vote here in chat. But I also, if you guys have any questions, I'm not going to ask any of my fucking questions until you guys are done voting, because I do not want to influence the outcome of this at all. But good God almighty, I've been sitting over here chewing on my fucking pen. Because there are so many thoughts. And I was watching the chat, and y'all hit on some of them, but I need you guys to decide who you think made the most persuasive case. Again, that is what we do here. We're not voting for who we like or who we think is the cutest or who we agree with. We are voting for who made the best arguments tonight. And I do understand that it's especially difficult when it comes to a 3v3, but that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this with just the audience instead of having judges here, because you have to weigh out the benefits of one against the detriment to another. So, which team as a group worked best together? Which team as a group made the most cohesive arguments? I will also tell you, and I'm not going to say which team is which, but it was fun for me to see because I'm in the background watching the debate, like their chat. I'm not actually reading what they're chatting to each other. All I see is the fact that one team had 31 messages to each other in the course of that debate. The other team had 151. So I'm curious to see which of those two teams actually pulls it off. So that said, you guys saw that link. Tyler is not at his desk. Is anybody else streaming on YouTube? I don't know if Tyler is actually live over on YouTube or not. So I'm going to go ahead and put the thing into his thing. Oh, you know what? Let's go look. Let's go see. Is there a Tyler live on Twitch? I'm sorry, on Discord. Does anybody else follow him? Nope, I don't see him. Okay, so there you go. All right, well then it's just over here. Oh, no. I did not mean to make you feel bad, Bisky. I'm sorry. That was the last thing I was trying to do. Tyler, are you streaming on YouTube?
Yeah.
Okay, here. Then I'm going to go ahead and give you the link into the chat room. So you should be able to put that over into your chat as well. But doesn't seem like there's going to be too many questions coming in, so I'm just going to focus on telling you guys that this was an absolutely amazing debate. All 6 of you guys did a great job, and I really wanted to be in this debate myself. So I'm glad that you guys did it justice. It did not go to some of the places that I expected it to, and it definitely went to some places that I expected it to just really, really late. So,
am I missing this link? Am I stupid?
Possibly. I mean, well, which question? That was 2 questions. Which one am I answering first?
The link.
Okay, gotcha. Here, you know what I'll do? I will put it into y'all's group chat. There you go. You definitely can see that one. All right. Now, we're gonna give that.
Ancom actually came up with our team strategy.
Yeah, really. So that's the other thing. So.
No, I would say it was a like Zach and I both, I think, started out with that strategy. So
I had to come down a bit because I actually believe in natural rights.
Love that. So yeah, okay. Yeah, again, I really want to fucking get into this with you guys. So you motherfuckers need to vote quick, please, because I'm not going to give it too long. How many? Oh, we got a lot of people. Okay, we do get a question. Good. Okay, you know what? That'll take us a little bit of time. So for the purposes of this part of the judgment, I'm going to go through each and every one of you guys and ask this question. We got a question from Razor, actually. So real quick, super succinct, a minute or less. Castle, what do you consider to be rights, and where do you feel that what do you feel gives them? Where do you feel that they come from? What are rights and where do they come from? There you go.
Okay. What do I feel like are rights?
Yep.
I think, what we kind of mentioned too is the right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, what our founding fathers have said, and then also just like the right to life. I believe in the right of speech. Personally, where they come from, I know that we have already gone philosophical, but I really do believe in natural rights and that we are born with certain rights. It's up to governments to decide how they want us to use those natural rights. And I think we debated that already, but I think we're literally born with certain inalienable rights. And then some rights are granted to us by the government. So it just depends what you're talking about. The ones I mentioned at the beginning, I believe that are inherent and natural to us. And then there are other rights that aren't. But I believe a lot of those we're just born with them as human beings.
Tyler, what do you consider to be rights, and where do you think they come from?
I misspoke a second ago. I don't believe in natural rights. I believe in like a shared objective morality. It's a little bit different.
Sure.
So I believe rights literally do come from the government. The government is a collection and conglomerate of the people in this particular instance, and that's why our rights are so good. But if you look at the rights and privileges of other people, rights being defined as legal or social rules or entitlements. And those, to me, who sets the rules, who makes the entitlements in every circumstance, that's the rulers, that's the government. So to me, rights are just a different type of structural rule that works a different way. We have dozens of them, laws, regulations, fucking civil codes and tort law. The president can do 5 different things and the Congress can do 8 different things. Like all these things are out there with their distinctive differences, but at the end of the day, government's what's in control of them all, in my opinion.
All right. So now, Circa, what are rights and where do they come from?
There's different kinds. So there's civil rights, there's natural rights, at least in the writings, right? And then inalienable rights. Civil rights are going to be what a government recognizes and enforces, and a natural right is what a government must answer to.
Okay. Yeah. Nice and clean. Ancom, what are rights and where do they come from?
I finally found the message I put in chat, which I think summed it up nicely. So I'm just going to read that. What is a right but a promise by the holder of the monopoly of violence that they will protect your freedoms? Freedoms exist naturally. Rights are commitments made by others to respect those freedoms.
Okay, I feel like that was an answer to the question, funny enough. How convenient that you saved it for later. All right, Doomer, what are rights and where do they come from?
I think rights can be pretty broad. I think like in specific for this prompt, we're talking about natural rights. So I'll go into more of like the line on where I think the natural rights kind of end versus like other types of rights people think. And that's kind of where I drew one of my distinctions at like independence from governance, like the right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, free speech, all those things exist kind of separate from governance. But like in the US, you also have like a right to interstate travel or whatnot, that can't happen without like state governance being in place. So like that would be like on the other side of that line.
What are rights and where do they come from, shirtless man?
I'm sorry, it's just so hot in here. I live in Mississippi.
I hear
bro.
you,
The
man.
swamp
I
is
know.
getting to me.
Like I said, I have to publicly say you're not allowed to do that, and so don't do it again. You can take it off when we're not
Shame.
looking at you. All right, go on.
All right, what was your question again, sir?
What are
Sorry.
rights? What are rights and where do they come from?
Well, my actual sincerely held position is
Yes.
that rights do exist in the sense that they are grounded in God. The God of Abraham, the great I am, created us in his image. We are all image bearers of God, and therefore we have duties that we derive our rights from. So we have a duty to behave in an upright manner to honor God's image. And from that, we derive that everyone has certain rights that are a result of the honoring of their duties. You have a right to exercise your God-given abilities in a forthright, upright, and moral manner according to God's law.
All right, good stuff. Well, so actually, funny enough, the next question was also for you. Oh, why is it all the way up there? It's supposed to be down there. I'm sorry, guys. You couldn't even see the fun little thing. All right, cool. So the next question was actually for you as well. Anonymous for Zach. If rights aren't real because states don't universally enforce them, does that mean that slavery was morally legitimate for most of human history since states universally permitted it or enforced it?
From a secular or atheist point of view, there's nothing wrong with slavery.
Okay. I feel like that was kind of a dodge, but okay. I'll allow it.
You want me to answer it again?
Well, yeah, no, let me ask the question again. Yeah, let me ask the question again to make sure, because again, they paid good money for this question.
Yeah.
If rights aren't real because states don't universally enforce them, I believe that was the thing that you said. Does that mean that slavery was morally legitimate for most of human history since states universally permitted or enforced it?
Not according to a Christian view.
Okay. All right. I see. So the states being non-Christian states was what caused the separation there. All right.
Islamic countries still, there's more slaves alive on the planet today than there was in the year 1800 or 1700 or 1600. Most of them exist in Islamic and African countries.
Okay.
Christianized countries got rid of that shit because my God says it's evil.
I would before we're done, and this is more for the after party, but I see other people in chat disagreeing. I would love to know the scriptures that you're referring to where that says in the Bible. I believe you. I would like to hear and be able to read those in the after party. So if you want to take a few minutes and find out where those exact scriptures are. We have one more question that came in from chat. When we talk about free speech, do you truly think that it is free? Or is there a cost to your speech? And if so, who collects that payment? Okay, it's sort of a deep question there, but we'll go back through one more time because we've got just a couple more minutes here that I'm going to give everybody to vote. Please, everybody, make sure that you are voting. There's the straw poll one more time. Castle, is speech actually free? Or do you have to pay for it? Is there a cost? And if so, where does that payment go?
I mean, if you're asking if speech is actually free in our society in the US right now or in general, I could give you two different answers there. I think in terms of where we're at as a society, obviously there's limits imposed by the government on what we are allowed and not allowed to say. So if you're a free speech absolutist, which was not our point, by the way, but if you're a free speech absolutist, you could absolutely say that there is a price to pay for you to say absolutely anything in this country or in other countries around the world. So if that's one part of my answer. Obviously, we believe that free speech is a natural right. So we're just saying it exists as a natural right. It doesn't mean that the way we view free speech today and the First Amendment views free speech means that there are no consequences to that. So hopefully that answers that question. Horst, if you think I need to add more there, let me know. Okay.
No, I think that's exactly what I wanted to hear. All right, same thing to you now, Tyler. Is speech free? Does free speech exist? Is speech free? And if not, or if so, like who pays the toll and who collects the toll?
Well, generally when we say free speech and we talk about these rights, we talk about them existing so long as they don't infringe upon another's rights. And I think that's the only legitimate way that rights can exist for everybody is if there's some sort of standard to say that they're limited to not infringing the rights of another individual. You can swing your fist as much as you want as long as you don't hit me, essentially. So I'd argue understanding the necessary confines in order for it to maintain this status quo, as good as we can have it, speech is free, yes. And it's maintained by essentially the government because they're the ones that set these rules up, kept them in place, enforce them, and change them based on the will of the voter.
All right. Circa. Is speech actually free? Is there someone who collects a fee? Go ahead.
I kind of want you to expand on that question.
All right.
What
I
do
will
you mean by
reread
speech
the actual question. Do you truly think that speech is free, or is there a cost to your speech? And if so, who collects that payment? Now, I will articulate it better if you need me to. I'm sure that this was sort of a double entendre for the word free, right? So, number one, are there consequences? Are those obviously probably not financial consequences, unless you believe that that our taxation is our entry fee for our protected rights from the government. Alternatively, do you believe that I'm actually allowed to say whatever I want to, barring the consequences of those words?
Under our definition, you are not. So the idea of speech as a natural right is a framework in which I was hoping Tyler would and I could come to a good discussion of what Locke actually says, because Locke actually states it like this, that man exists within a state of nature before government and is subject to the laws of nature. And then natural liberty is freedom from arbitrary power or lawless license. And government restrains these things partially and has restrains partiality and arbitrary domination, is what he says. And then what would happen here, at least under our definition, is if someone, it's kind of Tyler's argument as well, where we have like a standard, but it's kind of our definition here. We have a normative. Just happened to my fucking mic.
No, we're hearing you.
Oh, okay, sorry. It's on my stream then. I'll just keep going. The natural right is built upon this idea that there is a laws of nature which exist independently of government. And when someone goes against the laws of nature on someone else in a justifiable way, there's generic and then there's special executions of these rights, okay? Then you are now enacting a state of war, is what he calls it. He calls it a state of war. So if you are essentially inhibiting the rights, like what Tyler mentioned, of someone else in a justifiable way that you have a moral claim on, which has to be able to be expanded to all men. So it's the reason why calling someone a Jew is not a justifiable claim, because it must be an actual legitimate reason, like something that can ground it, right? And then be extrapolated to all men. Then you are now not acting with a natural right. You're enacting on a state of war, is what he calls it, state of war. So all speech is not just randomly free in our definition by any means. I also could probably talk about heart, but I think I've rambled long enough.
Fair. Ancom, sir, is speech actually free? If not, who collects the fees?
This is mistaking the definition, the dual definitions of the word free. So there's free in the sense of has no cost, and there's free in the sense of the term, the Latin libre, meaning freedom to do something. So the problem is the question is conflating the two meanings. I would say that from a libre, freedom to do it, yeah, it has no direct cost. They don't have to pay anyone to say something. Doesn't mean it's free from consequences, which is another sense of the word free. So yeah.
All right. Doomer, are rights free?
Depends on which way you view it, I guess. There's always that classical economic sense, like there's no free lunch. And then in other senses, like there may be some costs, like society-wise, to exercising some rights, but ideally the government with restrictions shouldn't unjustly be limiting your rights. I don't know if that's an answer that they were looking for, but
Sure. It's good enough for now. Adventurous, is speech free? If not, who collects the charges?
I actually really like Ancom's answer. It's a category error and a definitional error. A lot of words are the exact same word but have very different meanings. Free, as in free of an economic cost, is not the same thing as free to do. It's just it's a silly ass question. It's a question a child would ask.
Okay. Right on. So I guess that means that the word natural could also have different uses and or meanings, right? But we'll get to that in the after party here in a second, because I'm going to be a child about that word. All right, so everybody please lock in your votes. I knew that was the double meaning. That's why I didn't need you to explain to me, Grazer. I appreciate you, brother. And I was trying to not extrapolate or pull out the meaning or the double entendre there. I was hoping that they would play on it on their own. But Circa needed Mr. Literal, so I gave it to him. Okay, so last couple of seconds, we're going to look and see which one of y'all won this. I have not even peeked yet, so I have no idea if the voting is even close. But I'm going to make my prediction now that I'm about to look. I really should start voting myself, actually, but I haven't yet. So, you know what? I'm going to guess this is going to go to the negative. My money is on the negative if I was a betting man. So 3, 2, 1, show results. Fucking dead tie. Oh my God. Okay, well, no, we don't do ties. 17 votes for the negative.
1 vote up.
17 votes for the negative, 16 votes for the affirmative, 1 vote off from a 50-50 split to the negative team, and I get my money, please. Yay. All right. Thank you all. That was a fucking blast. This is a prompt that I very seriously have some feelings about, as you guys can clearly tell. And there were several things that I felt like did not get said. But those of you out in the chat, if you guys would like to, if you are part of the Discord server, first of all, excuse me, let me say my goodbyes. Gentlemen, any of you who have to go, please feel free. I understand. I thank you all for your participation tonight. Every single one of you guys did an amazing job. I'm fortunate every single time that I get to hang out with any of y'all. But tonight in particular, I was looking forward to it because this is 6 of the best debaters in the DMZ. And so I was super stoked. And again, as I said, this was such a good and important prompt that I've been looking forward to this all day. So that said, the rest of this is not going to be on the VOD. The rest of this, you have to be here live or a Twitch sub, and even then you only get to see it for a couple of weeks. But you guys have already seen their socials. I will probably try to drop them in the after party and trickle them out as well. But thanks everybody for showing up to the DMZ this week. We're going to be back tomorrow night with 3 1v1 night. And funny enough, if you guys enjoyed what you saw tonight, Tyler and Doomer are actually going to be at the headline tomorrow night. The two of them will be debating against each other, a judge v. judge match. But we're also going to have a grudge match between Lethe and Gorps, which I'm looking forward to just as much. And then, of course, we also have a new debater. Someone named Lucy Hayes is going to be going against Energy. So that's going to be a fun way to kick the night off. So tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Everybody, please tune in. I promise you will not be disappointed. Thank you again to all of tonight's debaters, and above all, thank you to all of the viewers. We wouldn't be here without you. DMZ happens live on Twitch, YouTube, and Kick every Friday and Saturday night, so make sure and follow, like, and subscribe so you will get notifications when we go live. And if you haven't already, join the free Discord server where we take the conversations after the lights go off and the cameras go away. That is where you can tell me if you are interested in participating in the debates. I am the Horseradish, and we hope to see you guys for the next round, here